The wind on Acheron, for didn't just howl, it screamed with the metallic screech of 1,000 rusted saws. It was a dead world, a tomb of obsidian glass and radioactive dust that had swallowed a dozen civilizations before the first human ever looked at the stars. Miller adjusted his rebreather, the hiss of recycled oxygen the only steady rhythm in a world falling apart. Behind him, the Divine Vault stood as an impossible monolith of white ceramic and black steel, a structure so advanced it looked like a polished tooth of a god rising from the throat of the earth. Xrak, the lead alien archaeologist, a four-armed chitinous being from the Xylos hegemony, was trembling, his sensory stalks twitching in a mix of religious awe and sheer, unadulterated terror. To the Xylos and every other species in the known galaxy, these structures were the remnants of the precursors, the ancient gods who had seeded the stars and then vanished into the ethereal fabric of time. They worshipped the metal. They prayed to the circuits. And right now they were failing to open the door while the Void Raiders closed in. The horizon was a jagged line of fire as the pirate skiffs descended, their scavenged railguns spitting lead and plasma into the black sand. Miller gripped his rifle, the cold iron of the Terran-made weapon a grounded comfort against the magic of the vault. He didn't care about gods. He didn't care about the origins of the universe. He was a mercenary, paid in credits to keep the smart people alive long enough to steal something valuable. But the smart people were failing. Xrak was waving a multidimensional resonance scanner over a dark glass panel, his mandibles clicking in a frantic prayer. The scanner, a piece of technology that could map a star's core, was returning nothing but static. The vault didn't recognize the hegemony's tech. It didn't recognize the pulse codes or the harmonic frequencies. To the vault, the most advanced alien technology in the galaxy was just background noise, as primitive as a monkey hitting a rock against a wall. A plasma bolt splashed against a nearby obsidian pillar, showering Miller in molten glass. He ducked, dragging Xrak down by his robes. The pirates were close now, their jagged ships landing in a swirl of radioactive dust, their boarding parties leaping out with rusted blades and stolen pulse rifles. Xrak was weeping, or the alien equivalent of it, a thick, translucent fluid leaking from his secondary eyes. He cried out that the gods were angry, that they had been judged unworthy of the great light. He believed the vault was a test of spirit, a trial of the soul that no mortal could pass. Miller looked at the door, then at the console. It was a sleek, black slab of material that looked like frozen water. There were no buttons, no slots, no obvious way to interact with it. The alien scholars had spent 3 weeks trying to attune their spirits to the machine, using meditation and complex algorithm chants. It was a farce. Miller checked his magazine, 5 rounds left. The pirates were screaming, a war cry that vibrated through the ground. They wanted the divine spark, inside, the weapon they believed the precursors had left behind to reshape the galaxy. Miller stood up, ignoring the heat of the incoming fire. He was tired. He was frustrated. And most of all, he was annoyed by the piety of it all. He didn't see a temple, he saw a door. And every door had a handle. He slumped against the console, his shoulder hitting the black glass with a heavy thud as he braced himself to fire his last shots at the advancing raiders. His left hand, slick with his own blood from a shrapnel graze, slid across the surface of the dark interface. Xrak screamed in horror, reaching out to pull Miller away from this sacred surface, terrified that the human's unclean touch would trigger a planetary extinction event. But the glass didn't explode. It didn't pulse with holy fire. Instead, the geometric lines on the vault door stopped their slow, rhythmic pulse. They turned from a cold, distant blue to a warm, welcoming amber. The dark glass of the console didn't just light up. It dissolved into a high-definition holographic display that was terrifyingly familiar. A soft, synthesized voice, devoid of the booming thunder Xrak expected, echoed through the howling wind. It was a voice that sounded like it belonged in a corporate office, calm, professional, and slightly bored. It spoke in a language that Xrak couldn't understand, but Miller's heart stopped the moment the words hit his ears. It wasn't the language of the gods. It was English. Identity confirmed. Biometric scan. DNA sequence 99.9% match. Welcome back, Director Miller. It has been 314 million days since your last login. You are currently behind on your quarterly safety briefings. Would you like to start the Zero-G Workplace Etiquette module now, or should I postpone it for another 5 million years? The voice was clear, crisp, and utterly mundane. The massive, 10-story-tall ceramic door didn't slide open with a magical shimmer. It hissed with the familiar sound of high-pressure pneumatics and heavy-duty ball bearings. The ground shook as a secondary security protocol engaged. From the roof of the vault, two sleek, white spheres detached themselves. They didn't fire beams of divine judgment. They deployed internal stabilized 30mm Gatling turrets and identified the Void Raiders as unlicensed pests. In a blur of hyper-efficient kinetic fire, the pirates were not vaporized by holy light, they were turned into red mist by high-velocity lead. The ancient gods didn't use magic. They used superior engineering and a very strict trespasser policy. Xrak was on his face, his forearms wrapped around his head, chanting a hymn of forgiveness. He thought the gods had chosen Miller as their prophet. He thought the blood on Miller's hand was a sacrificial offering that had satisfied the heavens. Miller just stared at the open vault. Inside there were no glowing altars or ethereal spirits. It was a warehouse. A massive, climate-controlled, automated storage facility. Rows upon rows of shipping containers were stacked into the infinite darkness, each one labeled with a barcode and a manifest. He walked inside, his boots echoing on the polished linoleum floor. He reached out and touched a nearby crate. The holographic label flickered to life. Model 7B Atmospheric Scrubbers, property of Terraforming Corp., Houston Branch. He looked further down the hall. There were crates of emergency ration bars, chocolate flavor, racks of MK4 industrial welders, and a pallet of standard issue office chairs, ergonomic mesh. The realization hit Miller like a physical blow. The precursors weren't some ephemeral, multidimensional entities that had transcended the universe. They were us. They were humans from a cycle so old that the mountains had fallen and the stars had shifted, a version of humanity that had reached the pinnacle of technology, built a galaxy-spanning infrastructure, and then, what? Left? Died. Rebooted? The old gods were just a bunch of engineers, janitors, and middle managers who had built a very sturdy storage unit for their extra office supplies. The divine spark the pirates had died for was probably just a crate of high-capacity fusion batteries or a very efficient vacuum cleaner. Miller looked back at the terrified Xrak, who was still trembling at the threshold, afraid to step onto the holy floor. The alien looked at the shipping containers with the same awe a man might look at a burning bush. Miller realized then that the greatest secret of the universe wasn't that we were alone, but that we were the heirs to a legacy of mundane excellence. Xrak, get up, Miller said, his voice echoing in the vast, silent warehouse. The alien looked up, his stalks wobbling. Is the judgment over, prophet? What does the Creator demand of us? What are these sacred relics? Miller looked at a crate of industrial-grade toilet paper near the door and sighed. He felt a strange mix of pride and profound disappointment. We weren't the children of gods. We were the descendants of the most over-prepared logistics company in history. He reached into a nearby open bin and pulled out a small metallic object. A simple, sturdy multi-tool with a Made in Ohio stamp still visible under the dust of eons. He flipped out the screwdriver attachment and looked at the glowing blue lines of the vault. The Creator wants us to stop being so dramatic, Xrak. And apparently, the Creator wants me to watch a safety video. He looked deeper into the vault, where rows of precursor starships sat. Ships that looked exactly like the ones humanity was currently trying to build, only better, faster, and with more legroom. The cycle hadn't ended, it had just waited for someone with the right fingerprint to come back and clock in for the shift. Miller walked to the main terminal, the one that the alien sages had spent years trying to communicate with through prayer. He saw a sticky note icon glowing on the holographic screen. He tapped it. A text box appeared, written by a human hand 300 million years ago. If you're reading this, I finally retired. The keys are under the mat. Don't let the plants die, and for the love of God, don't touch the Format Universe button in the basement. It's sensitive. Dave. Miller stared at the screen for a long time, the weight of the ancient mystery dissolving into the reality of a cosmic handoff. He looked at his own scarred, dirty hands that were identical to the ones that had built this place. We weren't searching for the tech of the gods, we were just finding our own lost luggage. He turned to the security spheres, which were now hovering patiently, waiting for their next command. Computer, Miller said, testing the limits of his new directorship. Cancel the safety briefing. And see if there's any of those chocolate ration bars left. It's been a long day. The vault hissed in a sympathetic tone, a vending machine humming to life in the back of the room. The ancient gods might have been gone, but they had left the snacks behind, and for Miller that was enough of a miracle.